What an absolutely crazy episode we had today, guys. First things first, I was right about who that character was. I knew it. I knew that's who it was in the opening. I knew it was the girl with Orsted in season 1. I knew it was. I mentioned that in a video earlier this season. But to think that this episode would be as important as it actually is wild. This episode sets up, pretty sure Mushoku Tensei is a series moving forward. And it has a lot of significance as we finally meet Nanahoshi. Now, I knew a little bit about her before going into this season. I'll admit, I was told a little bit of information about her. Just a small bit. Like her name, for instance, and that she's also someone from Rudy's world. Someone we might know quite well, actually. So, let's get straight into it and talk about Mushoku Tensei Season 2, Episode 9 today, because it is a very important one. So our episode begins as many others have in this season of Mushoku Tensei, with us seeing Rudeus just goofing off with a member of his harem, trusted associate, and just enjoying their time in the academy to the fullest. And Sylphie is truly going through it right now. It's so bad, Ariel literally has to tell her that, you turn to stare every time Rudy goes past you. As Sylphie says, shouldn't I? Ariel tells her, there's nothing wrong with that. But even though you feel so strongly, he's completely forgotten about you, hasn't he? And it's here we find out that Sylphie never told them that she didn't tell Rudy who she was. So they've been under the assumption that she told him and that he just doesn't care or doesn't remember her at all. What is Sylphie doing? Even they're kind of looking at her like, you haven't told him yet? As she tells them, I don't know what I'll do if he's forgotten about me. As Luke correctly tells her, you're hopeless, Sylphie. Truth be told, she really is kind of stressing herself out at this point, honestly. She's got to give Rudy some credit. I think he would remember her, especially after what happens in this episode. We'll talk about that in a bit. And it's here Ariel tells her that, I leave the matter of Rudeus in your hands. I'm not going to intervene. You can use fits however you want, so do as you see fit. So now the ball is in Sylphie's court. And as we transition to our next scene, we see Rudeus is still hard at work trying to figure out the cause of the teleportation incident. As we hear, the more I study that disaster, the more teleportation seems like summoning. One calls things, the other sends them away. But there are insurmountable differences. Namely, you can't summon people. So it's here he actually goes and asks Fitz, aka Sylphie, hey, do you know any experts on summoning? And it's here we see that Sylphie's still out of it a bit after the events of talking to Ariel earlier. We're going to see that a lot this episode, Sylphie just being out of it. As she tells Rudeus, I do know of one, a summoning specialist. As she says, I'm sure you've at least heard their name. It's the special student Silent 7-Star. And upon hearing that, we see that Rudy's heard a lot more than just their name, as he says, from improving dining hall menus to inventing uniforms and blackboards. They've done a lot for this school, and I recognize most of it from my old world. As he decides to go meet them face to face. But it's here as Rudeus gets to this door and opens it. He is in for the shock of his life, as we see that Silent 7-Star is the woman that was with Orsted when he murdered Rudy. As she tells him, it's been a while, hasn't it? And our boy Rudy has nothing short of a panic attack here. Runs out of the room, clutching his chest, screaming bloody murder, just remembering that ordeal and how horrific it was. And as she goes after him, the shock from it is so much that he passes out here. He is that overwhelmed. And it's here as we transition to our next scene and Rudy regains consciousness. He senses a familiar set of hands stroking his head, as we see that Sylphie's here now to help him. But they're not alone, as we see this woman is still with them, as she says, "Honestly, what are you so afraid of? I saved you before, didn't I? Oh, but you were dead, so I guess you wouldn't remember, huh?" Rudy is immediately panicked as he says, "Where's Orsted?" As she tells him, "Relax, it'll be a while before he comes for you." As Rudy's like, "You mean he will come to kill me someday?" As she tells him he doesn't plan to, but depending on your actions, he just might. But it's here with Rudy panicked like this, they're not getting anywhere. So she takes a direct approach, gets in his face and says, "I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Answer truthfully. Firstly, do you recognize these names?" As we see they're Japanese names, so of course Rudy's going to recognize them. Second, do you know this language? Which we know he does. And third, which one of these 2 are you? As Rudy tells him, or her, neither of them. But she is able to deduce that he can speak the language still. As she concludes that her and him are from the same place. And it's here she starts taking off her mask. Rudy thinks to himself, "In my last memory of my past life, I saw a truck about to hit a high schooler with the same face as this girl." As she introduces herself as Nanahoshi Shizuka. And she's from the same world as Rudy. And she is ecstatic to have anyone to talk to from her world right now as she bombards Rudy with question after question. Saying, "Oh, I knew that sparing you was the right choice. What a morbid thing to say." And as she asks for Rudy's name, he does introduce himself as Rudeus Grey Rat. As she says, "Ah, so that's your alias here, right? Oh, you must be nervous, though. I can't blame you after what happened, you know, us kind of killing you and all. But don't worry, I'm on your side." And as she takes Rudy's hand, she says, "It feels reassuring to know that I'm not the only one who got sent here. Let's work together to go back to our world." And it's here Rudy just tells her flat out, "I don't want to go back to my old world." And upon hearing that, our atmosphere changes dramatically. As Sylphie tells them both, "Can you please speak a language I can understand?" That's why the language, or the subtitles are like this, guys. I believe these 2 are speaking Japanese right now, and Sylphie's speaking like this land's language. I think that's why they're differentiating it. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. And it's here she tells Rudy flat out, "I have no interest in this world. I won't put my knowledge to use here like in some lame fantasy manga or light novel. Shots fired." As Rudy tells her, "It's true I came from the same world you did. I was born here as a baby, and before I knew it, I had family and friends in this world." As she says, "So you were reincarnated, huh? I was more or less teleported here. We're alike, but different." And it's here she starts explaining to Rudy that, "I was on my way to school with friends when a truck came at us. And then I was here." As Rudy tells her, "I was in a traffic accident." Oh, that may or may not involve you as well. Nanahoshi tells him, "I got dumped in the middle of the Asura kingdom. And then Orsted took me under his protection." As Rudy asks why, and she says, "I don't know. But I don't think he's the one that summoned me. I spent 2 years in Asura learning the language, and after that, he took me on a journey around the world. He has enemies everywhere, so the fights were constant, and attacking you was just one of them. But you seem different from the others, so I asked Orsted to bring you back." And it's here Rudy asks the question that I'm wondering as well, as he says, "So why is Orsted at war with the man god anyway?" As Nanahoshi tells him, "I don't know either, but he said it's a personal grudge." As she continues her story and says, "Man God aside, we traveled all over the world in a year to gather data for my return and to look for the two guys in that note." As Rudy's like, "You traveled the whole world in a year?" And she tells him, "Yeah, using a special method." And that special method happens to be teleportation circles. As she says, "You can still find some in ruins left over from the human-demon wars." As Rudeus asks about these ruins, and she tells him, "I'm not allowed to tell you that." And it's here Rudy decides to change the subject, as he says, "Well, did you find any leads out there?" As she says, "No, but a person I met on the journey told me that I may have been summoned to this world by someone." As Rudy asks who that is, and she says, "I can't tell you. They asked me not to mention them." It's really not giving much information, I'll say that, being very vague. And it's here she starts explaining to him that we're foreign objects to this world. If we do anything to significantly alter history, the world will erase us. So I only make things that I need, and I don't share them unless it benefits me. And it's here Rudeus notices all the magic circles she has spread across the room that she's researching them. As she says, "I taught myself using the university's books," and tells him that this world's people are too set in their thinking. No one can teach me what I'm trying to do, since no one's done it before, after all. It doesn't help that they assume I have mana. As Rudy's like, "Wait, you don't?" And she tells him, "Nope, I don't have any." And it's here she tells him, "Oh, by the way, everything in this world, every single thing, contains mana. Even dead bodies." As she adds, "Oh, by the way, this part might not apply to you, but I've been in this world for 5 years, and I don't seem to age." And it's here she concludes her story. She asks Rudeus, "Think you can trust me a little bit more now that you know?" Now he says yes here, but I don't know personally, especially because after he says yes, she immediately tells him, "All right then, let's make a deal. I have no mana and no way to fight. I don't age, but I'm probably not immortal. And I hate this world. Doesn't feel real, and the food sucks. It's morally dubious and inconvenient." Yeah, a little bit. Just a little bit. "And I left people behind in our old world." As she asks Rudeus, "What about you?" But Rudeus tells her, "I like this world. I don't want to go back. Who would?" As she asks, "You didn't leave anything behind?" And he says with no hesitation, "I have no regrets." So with all this said and out the way, we're at an impasse now. As Nanahoshi tells him, "We have different goals, but we each have something the other wants. You have mana. You help me with my experiments, and I'll tell you what you want to know." Basically, as Rudeus points out, it's a give and take relationship. And as we see Rudeus agree to her plan, we see Sylphie is quite sad about this development. As Nanahoshi tells him, "Just so we're clear, no backing out later." As Rudy says, "A man's word is his bond." And upon hearing that, she tells him, "You know, it's good to hear a saying from home like that. You know, despite what happened in the past, I imagine she's got to be really homesick right now. So this is probably a big comfort for her to have someone to talk to now that's from the same world, that knows what she's going through." But with that out the way, time to get straight into it, as she says, "All right, what do you want to know? I hear that you're investigating the mass teleportation." And as Rudy asks who that was, we see that it was Sylphie. As he tells her, she's about to tell us about that disaster right now. Because again, she's speaking a different language, so Sylphie does not understand what they're saying right now. As Rudy literally has to tell her, "Hey, speak in the normal language so she can understand you." So now that everyone understands what everyone's saying, Nanahoshi says, "I don't know how it happened, but it was 5 years ago, right when I arrived." as she takes out some rings and says the mass teleportation was probably the backlash, and I might have been the one that caused it. And upon hearing this, Sylphie is enraged and immediately attacks her. She says, everything we went through, all because of you, as Rudeus has to pull her away. She tells Rudy, how can you be so calm? I know you've suffered too. As Rudy has to tell her, no, she's a victim too. She didn't intentionally cause that. She didn't choose to come here. And upon hearing this, Sylphie does calm down, as Nanahoshi says. I probably could have phrased that a little better, to be fair. And it's here Nanahoshi tells them, look, I don't understand that incident either. Not who would cause such a disaster or what they hope to gain. As Rudy asks if Orsted said anything about this, as she tells him, he only said that this has never happened before. As Rudy remembers, wait, I thought the man god said that Orsted caused it though. As she tells Rudy, look, I didn't want you making a fuss later about this, so I just got it out the way. I probably did do it. And I might have some idea of what could have triggered it. If my work succeeds, I should be able to explain the mass teleportation logically. As logically as magically being teleported to another place can be explained, after all. As Rudy tells her, I think this is enough of an info dump today. I need to think things over. As she tells him in a very not suspicious, creepy way at all, it'll be nice working with you. And as we transition to our next scene of Sylphie and Rudeus walking, I like the symbolism here of her desperately trying to keep up with Rudy, to stand next to him, but he keeps pulling away and she keeps falling behind more and more. It's a great symbolism and exactly what this episode showcased. That's exactly how she's feeling right now. As she eventually stops and asks Rudy, what do you think of her? As Rudy tells her, to be honest, some things about her rub me the wrong way. Kinda her killing me. But for now, I trust her. As Sylphie reluctantly tells him, alright then, that's good enough for now. As Rudy adds, so you were worried about me back there, weren't you? I sincerely appreciate that. As we see Sylphie is stressing herself out again over this. And with that, our episode ends. And I gotta say, guys, with the next episode literally being called These Feelings, I'm hoping Sylphie will finally just address this situation, because she's really doing it to herself at this point. I really think that. But regardless of all that, the introduction of Nanahoshi in this episode is huge for the series. I can imagine this is a big event where things are not going to be the same afterwards, because now we know someone else from the other world. We know someone else who's the same as Rudeus. And we have more questions now. Why is she here? Why is he here? What's her relationship with Orsted? What's Orsted's relationship with the man god? So many questions get asked in this episode, and I can't wait for the answers. I think Mushoku Tensei might start picking up from this point, and I'm here for it, guys. I love that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this pretty damn important episode down in the comments, honestly. I read them all, so feel free to comment away. But until next time, guys, I hope you guys have a great day, week, month, and year. And until then, deuces, have a blessed day, and I'll see you guys next time. Deuces.